Hey everyone, we're going to get started here soon. So welcome if you're here to chat. Basically, I'll give a quick overview while we wait for people to come in and give everyone a chance. But the basic format of this chat or this stream is going to be we're going to load up Tabletop Simulator. I'm going to walk you through and give you an overview of the private eye case. And I'm going to do a little bit more than talk about it. I'll give you a quick overview, but then I want to go through some of the unique mechanisms, and I'll probably sort of play double-handed a little bit to show you the strategies of both the prosecution and defense, because it's pretty asymmetrical. So I want you to see how each player would play each role a little bit. And then obviously we can come back to this sort of intermission room to cover any questions that you may have or that I may have missed during the stream. I do have the chat up, which I will be reading, saying hi to anyone who wants to hit that chat up while we're playing. So if anything comes up while we're playing, or if you have any questions about the crowdfunding campaign on GameFound or anything like that, we have exactly 24 hours left in about 5 minutes. So yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna switch over to Tabletop Simulator just so we can finish setting up the private eye case and so you can see it. So when I start talking about it, it makes a little bit more sense, hopefully. Yeah, so I've started setting things up. To keep things interesting, I'm going to walk through setup a little bit, and I'm going to keep something a mystery. So since I'm sort of playing double-handed, normally the prosecution is in charge of selecting a strategy. I randomly chose one. It's a family affair. In this scenario, the ringleader is Scarlett Samantha, who is the twin sister of the victim. So it tells you which key witnesses you have, but you'll notice it also tells you which claimed witnesses you have. So the prosecution starts with a couple claimed witnesses that they can use, because you'll see with some of the card effects, they're forced to discard certain claimed witnesses to avoid effects or to trigger effects. So they start with a few that they can use. And the witnesses are set up in this pyramid scheme as a conspiracy, with the conspirator at the top, or the ringleader at the top, the co-conspirators sort of on level 2, and then all the patsies at the bottom. And then the defense always has the same strategy, which is solve the case. They have this little notepad here, which shows you all the possible outcomes of the case. So there's a little bit like Clue, where you're trying to find out the culprit, the murder weapon, and the crime scene. And if you can name all those three things, you win the game. No matter what the court case is, you found the true culprit, the true person behind it. So this little card just lists everything. It lists all the potential culprits. So it could be Scarlett, it could be her husband Walter, it could be Dorothy Lupino, or it could be Matthew, who murdered Monique Monroe, the twin sister of Scarlett. And then they could have done it with their bare hands, a revolver, the knife, or the Maltese owl. And then the murder locations are the LA Docks, the Night Owl Diner, the Chateau Marmont, or the Zenith Film Studio. So while the defense doesn't really get to pick a strategy, they can pick their private investigator. So you'll notice they all have slightly different called effects. And all of the call effects give the defense an opportunity to win the game. So when they're called, they can attempt to solve the case. You can name a culprit, location, and crime scene. And if you get it right, you would instantly win, because obviously the prosecution will pick those things and know what they are. But in some cases, like with Liza Ann, if I get the culprit right, I can force the prosecution to discard 2 cards. So I can choose sort of which clue deck to work my way through to trigger beneficial effects for myself. I'll play with Liza Ann. I'll put the other private investigators over to the side for now. In the tabletop simulator mod, I don't have the other allies, but another decision point for the defense would be that they could select the 3 allies. 1 ally goes in each clue deck. So they could choose the 3 allies to put in these decks, but I have just the base ones here. And so I don't know, so we as a viewing audience don't know the solution to the murder mystery. I'm going to randomly pick each thing, and we'll set it over here. So we're randomly picking the culprit, the murder weapon, and the crime scene. But in a real game, the prosecution can make that decision and pick those things. So once that's done, we will just shuffle our allies into these clue decks. You'll notice that the clue decks have these bias symbols on them. You need to play cards with those bias symbols to solve a clue. So if I had a card, an evidential card with the spyglass and the thumb, I could solve this card and flip it over and see it. But there are ways for the prosecution to put red herring tokens on this card, making it harder to investigate. And I can use these to sort of mark that I've solved a clue on that card. And I can also use these tokens that will be included in the game to mark off who I know it not to be. Just like Clue, I can keep track of those things. Setup wise for the prosecution, they pretty much set up this triangle, pick their thing. It's a little more standard. And then they start with these 2 claimed witnesses. I'll move their strategy up here. And then last but not least, we have this deck of 60 cards of evidence here. So the first thing I want to do I'll do a random draft so we don't have to go through all the cards. But I would like to look at a couple cards here because most of them, you will see, have this investigate with a thumbprint in blue text. So the investigate action is something that only the defense can do. Again, this case is very asymmetrical. The prosecution is playing sort of has an easier and a more straightforward role in this game where they have stacked the witness pool and they are working to get every juror on their side to frame the private investigator for the murder of Monique. So they have to get all the jurors on their side. As they move bias symbols over into this spot, they will collect these red herring tokens, which just have a fish around the bias icons, and they can place these red herrings on the clues to slow down the private investigator's investigation. So the prosecution is really sort of splitting their influence between 2 things. They can work to really solidify certain jurors on their side to get these red herring tokens to slow down the investigation, or they can go to just lock up every juror, by just moving them one space. But if you're not moving to that final space, you're not going to collect that red herring token that you can use. So the prosecution is just sort of playing the court case more straight up. They're using planted evidence, like this film award, which says planted on it, to try to frame the private investigator. And meanwhile, the private investigator is looking to spend they're splitting their time between defending themselves in case, they're representing themselves in the court of law. So they're spending their time making a stand, playing the game sort of like you normally would in Lawyer Up. And then also they have the option of playing any evidence, investigating the crime with any piece of evidence. And if they play an evidence with an investigate keyword like this Samantha Estate on it, they can also trigger that effect. So, the Samantha Estate says, unless the prosecution conspires with a co-conspirator, draw 1 crime scene from either player's discard pile. So conspiring with means that they're spending and discarding, removing one of their claimed witnesses from the game in order to avoid the defense doing that. That's what that terminology means. So I think that covers a lot of the basic sort of rule changes and stuff. For me personally, I always like to see it rather than sort of talk about it or get a rules dump. So I'm going to randomly split up this evidence into a buried evidence pile, a defense pile, and a prosecution pile. And we'll do sort of the quick setup. So I'll shuffle that with this base deck here, and I will shuffle that with the defense's base deck here. And we'll start playing through a few rounds as fast as I can so that you guys can see some of the game. So each player will draw up to their 5 cards. I'm set up as a game master, so you guys can see both players' hands at the table, hopefully. Again, if the sound is bad or anything, and anyone's watching, please let me know if I'm going too fast or if you have any questions. I should be able to... I have the chat here on the right side of my screen, so if you type something, it should pop up. Okay, so each player starts with their 5 hands like normal. The judge starts in the prosecution's favor, so they call a witness first. The restriction, of course, is that they have to call one of the 3 witnesses at the bottom of their conspiracy pyramid. They can't start by calling the ringleader. They have to work their way up. So let's see. I will play. Let's call Timothy Dean. That'll give me 2 in the defense 1. Its called effect is clear or gain 1 red herring. So since I, as the prosecution, have called Timothy, I obviously want to gain a red herring. And I'm going to gain this one here. And I'm going to put it on this clue deck to slow them up investigating. I think it's murder weapon. I think it's culprit, murder weapon, location. But I could be wrong, and I don't want to look until we flip over. And then I start playing like normal. What can I match here? I'll start by playing this Sliver of Onyx for 4. It is an investigate effect, which I don't get as the prosecution, but it's a big piece of evidence for the prosecution, obviously, so that's a good thing. The cops almost missed it. A little sliver of onyx that matches exactly the look of the statuette missing from the Night Owl Cafe. Broken off during a fight, no doubt. So now it's my turn. So one of the cool things about being the private eye is that cards like this stolen reels are actually useful to me. So every piece of evidence that I get is somewhat useful to me because when I investigate, when I take the investigate action with a piece of evidence, I put a token on the number to mark it as worth 0 value because I'm not presenting it in case. So I can play this here as my action and investigate. And I can remove or cover these symbols. So since this is the first time we're doing it, I'll do it sort of slow. So I can cover this symbol here. And then I could investigate this symbol and this symbol. And since this card now has no bias tokens on it, I can solve this clue. So what I'll do is I'll draw the top card of the clue deck. And I know that Dorothy Lupino is not the sort of ringleader or the culprit, the murderer of Monique. So I'll just put this over here. You'll notice that every time I solve a clue, the prosecution sort of gains a benefit. So in this case, when it's solved, the prosecution draws 1 card. So I'll give them a card. But I do know it's not Dorothy Lupino, so I could cover her up on my sheet here if I wanted to. But you also can keep the card to keep track of it. Just sometimes it's easier to look at this to remember who you have. If you wanted to, you could put a screen up to make sure this was secret, but if the other player is paying attention, they should know whether or not you've solved certain things. Okay, so that's my turn. You can see that in the court of law, I'm losing a lot of influence, and they're going to use that influence to sway the jury a lot, potentially. For their next move, we're going to do tamper with evidence, just because I want to show you how it works a little different. So it still gives me 2. It will discard this evidence from my examination, because my top card of my examination is evidence, even though I didn't use it in court. It would discard it, but since it was worth 0 to me anyway, it's not going to affect the influence here. And as an argument, I could object to that, but I wouldn't. Next up, I'm going to play down bribery. It's important to note that I cannot use procedures or arguments to investigate the murder. I can only use the investigate action on evidence. There's not much more the prosecution can do here to sort of boost the points. So maybe they do something like this. They play this for 3. And then they play maybe this card to get the victory effect on the bottom, because it's a piece of evidence and it can ignore bias. Comes back to me. I'll play tamper with evidence to get rid of that card, but and then as the prosecution, I think I would pass to force the win here. And then as the defense, I would probably sidebar. Let's go for the win. I know a lot of people out there have said, we've changed the pass rule for the game, where once you pass, you only get 1 more examination action. So I'll show you how even with this big point differential, we can try to make a comeback. I'm going to trigger bribery and get 3 more. I got to move these. Move them down a little bit. And 2 more. And now I have 1 more card to play. Not much I could do. I could add co-counsel and go for a legal argument. Let's do this. That's not an examination action to play a wild in there. It's under a separate section of the rulebook. So my final examination action will be to do legal argument, which would be worth 6. But I think the prosecution would object to that and discard the card. So then as our final action, since we can't win, we will investigate with this card and cover up this, 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 and this. And then we will resolve each, and then we would resolve each clue 1 by 1. So we've solved this one, so we can clear this one off and we can draw it. And we know the revolver was not the murder weapon. So we're making some progress. When the revolver's drawn, their defense shuffles their hand into their deck and draws 1 card. I don't have a hand, but I would draw 1 card. Oh, I hate that. I forgot about that. You can't use the hotkeys when you're game master, which is very annoying. So I at least get to see a card that would be in my hand. Obviously, the prosecution has won. And even though I've covered up these two symbols, there's still this red herring on this card, so I can't solve that one either. And when I investigated, I couldn't conspire with Claudette because I don't have any claimed witnesses, so I don't have any people to conspire with. I should probably put those away so I don't mistake them for claimed witnesses. So I'll clear this off. I did mitigate the damage from the prosecution a little bit over here. They're not going to get that victory effect, and they didn't win by a ton of victory. So first they're going to sway a justice or a balanced glass, bureaucratic, I think is what we call it. And they're going to sway this one to get this red herring and put it on this piece of evidence. And then they'll claim this witness as someone that they can conspire with. And then they have 3 influence to spend. And I think they would do... Now, see, here's where it becomes interesting, because the prosecution could sway these 2 people to impede my investigation or go for more of a win by actually getting these people on their side. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to split the difference. I'm going to go here and 1 here. And I will put this on this card. Okay. So the defense lost. So they will refresh their sidebar and gain the judge's favor. And then I can call the next witness. And I am limited by the same triangle here. So I can call Claudette or Ryan Gable to the stand. I don't think there was planted evidence in either. Well, first, I should draw my 4 cards. And the prosecution would discard this card and then draw 4. All right, so let's look at our symbols a little bit. So you can pick a good... I only have 2 choices. So Ryan Gable would draw planted evidence from either player's discard. There probably was a planted evidence. I can get stolen reels back. A pack of cigarettes is not planted, but it could be from either player, so I could also go here maybe. Nothing planted, so it doesn't seem great to call that. We're just sort of doing this anyway, so I'll call this one. But I give them 2 points. So I'd probably take Ryan Gable just for victory effects, and that would allow me to draw the stolen reels to my hand, which, why wouldn't I? That gives me a chance to investigate. And then I start off 2-1. And I'll play through one more witness here, and then I don't know if anyone has any questions. We can sort of take it from there, I guess. I don't know. I'm doing pretty well on time. We'll keep going for a while. Hopefully people are enjoying watching the game being played. All right, so I got my planted evidence from a discard pile, and I need to open up with... that could be really good. Investigate. Peek at the top 3 cards of the buried evidence and draw one of them. But it's for influence. Ooh, definitely want to investigate with this one. So let's start with this gun, which we know is not the murder weapon now. We're going to investigate with it, so I'm not going to get any influence. And when we investigate with it, we can clear 1 red herring. So I'm going to clear this one. And then we can cover this one up. A mind is already covered, and the other thing's already covered, so I just get the 1 symbol out of it, which is okay. Oh, well, instead of covering that one, I'm actually going to discard this one so I can solve this. And this is my ally card, which lets me, I guess, yeah, it goes to your hand. It goes to my hand, and I can use it to investigate. If I solve a clue, when I do that, I can discard one planted evidence from your opponent's examination. So I can set this up, and it perfectly matches the deck it comes from. So if they don't put a red herring on this deck, I can play it to investigate and solve this, and potentially get rid of one of their planted evidence. But I didn't make any progress in my investigation of who actually murdered Monique, so I'm not really making any progress in solving the case right now. Okay, so can they play that? No. Man, they have a bad hand. Discredit the witness is pretty good, though. So maybe they start with discredit the witness. For 2, would I object to that? I guess I'd let it slide. It's hard to say. Hard to do objections when you're playing both sides. So this cancels the primary value of the witness, so it's going to cancels either side of the witness, so it'll take that 2 down to 0. And it goes back to the defense, the private eye. They could keep investigating. I'm going to use the manuscript as a combo. So I'm going to play it as an examination effect for 1. It says the prosecution cannot conspire until your next turn. Then you can play another card into your examination. I'm going to play Captain Alice to solve this clue. And we know that did not happen in the Night Owl Diner. And it allows the prosecution to gain I think any red herring. So they could pick something from the board, or they could pick something they've used already. They will pick something they've used already. And throw it on there. And I could discard a planted evidence, but there isn't one. And then if I'm marking this, my Night Owl Diner is second spot. So making progress in my investigation here. All right, prosecution would love to play this card. Could play that as a link, pretty rough. Guess I have to. I'm gonna play down new evidence. Actually, I'm gonna sidebar first. Back to the defense. Defense is getting scary. We're going to use this card as evidence in court. So it has no effect, but it gets us 4 points. Really bad draw. We'll do for the greater good for 6. I'm going to investigate with this card. Gets rid of a heart. And a skull. Prosecution will play this. I'm going to go for one more investigate. It's going to cover up this, this. The other two symbols aren't shown. So I solve this clue. And we know it's not Chateau Marmont. The prosecution gains another red herring. Chateau Marmont. So we've got a 50-50 shot at the crime scene currently. It's the LA Docks or Zenith studio. So you can see that as the private eye investigates, their percentage of guessing the entire thing correct sort of goes up. But if they have two things left, you know, I mean, if they've covered everything but one they don't know for sure, it's still only a 50-50. And you can see them giving up a lot of opportunities to generate influence in the court. I'm certainly losing the jury up here. All right, so now the prosecution's going to lay down the big guns. They're going to play a 5, which I'd probably object to because it'd be really scary. And then they'll play no further questions for 4, which means they pass immediately, which means I have one more examination action. Let's play this down and sidebar. And then would this get me another? I could investigate with this. I can't conspire with Dr. Ken. I don't have him. But I could use it to investigate. Let's do it. Let's get one more investigation out there. This is worth 0 to me, but I would cover up this symbol. I could discard this symbol. I could cover up this heart. And I could cover up this symbol. So you solve a clue one by one. So even though those are covered up, I've got to pick which clue I reveal because they could gain a red herring and put it right on there. Los Angeles Docks. The prosecution gains a red herring, so exactly what I thought could happen will happen. And they're going to take a skull and place it. Actually, they're not going to place that skull. They'll place one of these that are further away. They'll place this thumb here. So they're going to stop me from solving that clue. But I do know now that the LA Docks are not the case. So I know that the murder has happened at the Zenith Film Studio. And then we'll resolve the examinations here. No victory effect. Defense lost anyway, but I can take my investigation tokens back. Put these all in my discard pile. Victory effect, sway one skull. They'll definitely sway this 6. And get this, and put this here. And then get my sidebar back. Defense gets it. They're going to claim this witness. And we have 5 influence to spend. And the defense is doing a pretty good job with the case. So first we're going to spend 2 influence to get some red herrings to throw in their way. Then with the other 3, we're going to sway this juror. Because there's only a few jurors left before the defense is guilty. And I should note that if the prosecution ever has all of their jurors on their side at the end of a witness resolution, I'm pretty sure they immediately win. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that's in the rules. So if the defense is spending too much time investigating, they're going to need to shift their priorities. Okay, so I have to call Claudette, giving the defense 2. I would discard this card and draw 5. I think this will be our last round, since we don't have a lot of questions going on or anything. Maybe if the well, I guess as the defense, I could call myself, and if my call defect was about the crime scene, I might do it. But you know, it's best to save yourself, I think. So I'll be forced to call. I did this wrong. Prosecution gets 2. And I will start. And I will start with reasonable doubt. I think that would be objected to. It's the strongest argument in the base game. And then maybe I shift. I'm going to shift to this. And I'm going to use it to investigate. And it says, investigate. Unless the prosecution conspires with Alfred Wood or Deborah Diven, solve 1 clue automatically. So it doesn't matter how many things are on there. They do have Alfred Woods, though. So they would discard Alfred Woods and avoid that effect. But I made them get rid of one of those. And I still get to remove those effects. So I would remove a thumb and a heart and a skull. There is no skull. And still have 0. All right, so prosecution. I think they do the sharpening kit for 6. And then man, I'd have to sidebar. I don't think I have any. We used my bribery already. I know this is inadmissible. I have this down. Let's trigger inadmissible to get rid of this. Let's do this to get the judge. Judge is already on our favor. And then do another action. Drop this one for 4. Defense's turn. I don't think I can play any of these cards. So I would have to sidebar. And I think I would pass as the prosecution. Yeah. And it goes back to the defense for 1 more action. They're going to try to get as many points as they can, which they can't really do because they can't play this card either. So none of the cards I have match, so it's just as well. Man, really hurt. Could be a loss right there just based on bad card draw, but nothing matches that. Maybe I keep that to set up. Get rid of no further questions. Okay. So discard goes away. No victory effect or defeat effect there. Prosecution victory. Claim the top witness of the witness deck. So there's another witness they can use to conspire with for their conspire abilities. Victory effect here. Sway 1 thumb. Take the 6. Another claimed witness. Gets the sidebar back. 8 influence suspend. Not enough to win. Let's do 4. 4. Okay, so who's still on my side? What jurors do I still have? I have this one, and that's it. So the prosecution is really winning now. If they get this juror, I'm guilty. So let's do one more. We'll go to we're gonna play till 3, so you got time. Let's set this next round up. I'll draw 5. Do I keep this? Planted evidence. It's red. But I do need evidence to solve. I'll discard it. Question. Good day. Congrats on the campaign. Looking forward to playing. Thank you, Jeremiah. Thanks for being here and watching. Hopefully this is helping you learn how to play in the future, or it's a video that you can use as a resource later on once you have the game in your hands. Defense is calling. We have about 3 rounds left, or an instant loss here. Called, the prosecution may discard a hard card to draw 2 cards. That's not great. The defense reveals their hand and discards 1 card. If I call Helen Fairchild. So I'm moving up the conspiracy pyramid here, but these people are bad to call. If I call either of them, I give the prosecution more defense. So I think it's time to call myself. I would have a really bad chance of guessing the culprit. So I'll do it for dramatic effect, but I don't want to look and spoil it, so I'm just going to assume I don't know who it is. So I would call myself. This is one of my chances to win the game. So I could say, it happened at the Zenith Studio lot with the knife, and it was some Scarlet. Scarlet is trying to cover up her. She's not only the ringleader, she's covering up her own murder. And the prosecution would look and say, you have the culprit, you've guessed wrong, you have not solved the crime, and you've gotten the culprit incorrect, let's say. Just because my chance of getting that right is pretty slim. And then I would start playing. What do we have here? It's logical argument. Well, I may as well investigate with these cards that don't do anything for me. So I'll investigate with this. It lets me remove a head, a scale, and a skull. There's no skulls. I need a thumb now. Over the prosecution. The prosecution would love to play this card, the planted lever. So how can they do that? They start with moral argument, probably. You can also do it with address the jury. Address the jury is even better. Sway one bias. I would have to object to that because it would win them the game at the end of this round. So they will moral argument for 2. Then I have a little leeway. We'll investigate one more time. We will solve this clue. Remove a heart and remove a skull, which is wasted since I've covered all the skulls up. That lets me solve this clue. And the prosecution would discard a card of their choice. They would discard probably impassioned plea. Bare hands. We know it's not bare hands. So we have a 50-50 guess on the evidence there. The defense discards 1 card at random. So I lose that card. Back over the prosecution. The prosecution is going to play that that letter. 4, 5. And it says, conspire with a patsy to gain 1 red herring or refresh your sidebar. I'll conspire with a patsy. I'll discard Claudette to gain a red herring. And gain this one and put it here. Okay. Back over to the defense. Defense cannot lose this, but is not looking good. I could play Media Circus and show them 1 card. Ties it up. They'd be able to see this 1 card. They only have this card left, which is good. So they play that down probably. So I just barely won. I could do logical argument. No, I couldn't play it. But I might as well sidebar. I get surprise witness. I'd play surprise witness down. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I would then pass. Victory effect. Your opponent sways 1 bias. Oh. I have to play surprise witness here. And then I play logical argument. And they would probably object to logical argument to be worth a ton of points. I forgot Media Circus had that negative victory effect. All right, so I win myself. I don't have any influence to spend. But I do win the witness. But without any influence to spend, it's not really doing much for me. They would get their sidebar back. And then we would draw 5. When we have 15 minutes left, I'll just keep playing, I guess. See how far we can get. I think I can finish the game. And you can have seen a full game. I'm not feeling good. I think the prosecution's gonna be able to get me here, but I mean, I'm playing the prosecution too, but I've been referring to myself as the defense the whole time, so I'm just gonna keep referring to it that way, so it makes more sense. I'm gonna call Regina Monroe because I can discard a heart card, which is this blue card, to draw 2 cards. Okay, and then I start. And let's start with the Port of Los Angeles for big points. Investigate effect, victory effect, nothing to worry about there. Oh, the magnifying glass. So good. Let's do Charming Demeanor for 2. And then I can take another action, and I will use the magnifying glass as investigate. Obviously, you have to use the magnifying glass to investigate. Ignore the solved effect of a clue. And I should be able to solve a clue. I get 1 of each. Cover that one. Remove this one. No heart. I'll cover that thumb, so I'll solve this one. Maltese owl. So I actually know the murder weapon too. They did it with the knife, so my random guess was right. Thanks, Marie. Have fun. Yeah, thanks for the good luck wishes as well for the final 24 hours. I'm pretty happy where we are for this expansion and our first GameFound experiment. So really excited to get this game to everybody. I love how different each case is. I mean, that's one of my favorite things that we've done with this expansion is I truly feel like each case you crack open is a I guess it's not a different game, but it feels almost like a different game. the strategies are so different and the mechanics change things up so much. I really enjoy that. So yeah, the defense uses the magnifying glass to solve one more. And then the prosecution, man, we can really pump some things up. So let's play this one for 2. Is there an option to rescue jurors for a mistrial? As long as you have one juror on your side at the end, you will not be convicted of murder. So it needs to be unanimous. So that's a way you can get a mistrial. If at the end you've played the court case well enough that the prosecution only has one juror. Yeah, so you can play it more direct. Examine, draw the top card of your opponent's deck. Take that from them. Goes back to the defense. We really need to play... I mean, I could investigate with this card and it does nothing. I don't have Deborah Diamond to conspire with, so it doesn't really get me anything. Point of law. I like point of law. Let's play point of law for 3. It lets me get bribery back. That matches, right? Stiletto for 3. Gain 1 heart red herring. They've solved that, right? They know the murder weapon, so we should put it on here. Protect the culprit. The ringleader must protect the actual culprit. Okay. I'll put bribery down. And then if I was playing Sam, my co-designer, he would sidebar to spite me. So that's what I'll do to take away the option of using it. The Argus camera doesn't get us anything. So I think we pass, which means the prosecution will be able to win here. So we can play through that argument. They would try to do an evidential argument for 6, and I would object to that. And have a victory effect. You can't do legal argument. I mean, they could play this to do legal argument. I mean, let's do it. Their final action would be, after that objection, would be to do this. And this for 1, 2, 6. 16. So they would have 9 to spend, right? Or 11. They had 16 and they had 5. No, they'd have 11 to spend. So they could spend 5 here. And let's do 3 and 3. Clear or gain 2 red herrings. Yeah, we would gain 2 red herrings. Load this up. Okay, so I went too hard on investigating. I think the jury has spoken. I forget if it's an instant winner if he played to the end of the court case, but we'll end it here. Let's see what it says. Closing statements. For each witness you have claimed, gain through and says, oh no, you do play to the end because you get a bunch of effects at the end. The prosecution gets a bunch of influence at the end to make sure the jury's on their side. All right, 10 minutes left. We'll just finish this. We'll finish the case for real. Then we have a nice full playthrough of the game. Okay. Discard this. Oh wait, I shouldn't have drawn that. The ally card. Luckily I didn't spoil anything by knowing what that is. So I know it's the ally. I get to call the witness. I have to call Helen. Just going to give them 2. And me 0. And I have to discard. I have to reveal my hand and discard a thumb. I only have 1 thumb. Give me that. I'm really scared, so I have to play the court case like normal. We'll play this for 2. And clear or gain a herring. Red herring will clear a red herring. What's my favorite case to play? That's a good question. Let me take a second and think about that. From season 1, my favorite is the witch trial. Part of that is because in season 1, Sam Sam was sort of the lead designer on 3 of the cases. He was the lead designer on the witch trial, the murder case, and the art forgery case, and I was the lead designer on the Godfather case. So I'm super familiar with the Godfather case. You know, I wrote all the flavor checks, like I did all of that. So, and I play tested it more than some of the other cases. So the murder case and the 2 core cases that come in the core box, we played a bunch. So that was always what we showed at conventions. And the witch trial is the one from season 1 that I've played the least, and it's the most different. So the witch trial is my favorite from season 1. From season 2, I think I know for a fact. In fact, I think this is Sam's favorite, the private investigator case. I sort of was the lead designer on the divorce case and the private investigator case, and Sam was the lead designer on the heist case. Was sort of how it worked out. Although this case in particular, there was a lot of work from both of us that went into it, just because it's so different. So again, I'd probably go with the heist case because it's the one I've played the least of the new cases, and I always like something that's the newest. But if I take that away from it and I say, what's my favorite? I do really like the witch trial. I like the art. I like the theme. So probably the witch trial. That's what I'll go with right now. But I like them all for different reasons. Like, it would depend on my mood. You know, if I played the witch trial like 2 times recently, you know, I'd probably say something like the private investigator case, which, you know, we haven't play tested in a while because we've been working on the divorce case. Like, we've just been working on other stuff. So this is a little, you know, this case was pretty complete. This was sort of the first case that we finished because it was the hardest for season 2. So it's been a while since I've played a full game of it. So right now it's feeling pretty fresh to me. But tomorrow, since I just played this, I'd pick something different. So I'm always changing. Sort of depends on my mood. I do like this one a lot, though. I like the cat and mouse game of the jury and trying to figure out the case, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So what would the process? Let's get back to playing here because I do want to finish the game before, hopefully within an hour. You know, an hour stream's nice, and then there's a decent playthrough of it. Yeah, let's play this planted trunk contents. For 3. And that lets me gain a red herring or refresh my sidebar, and I'd refresh my sidebar because I loaded up that last clue that they need pretty well. Okay, so back over to the defense. I think we go for a win and we play 3. Add what evidence from your hand to your examination, ignoring bias. Lets me add this. Add, not play. So I get the 2 points. without the examination effect of clearing a heart. Goes back to the prosecution. They can't counter argument. They could do key evidence though for 5 points. I can't object to it. So that's what they would do. Because the previous card was evidence, even if it's planted evidence. So I'd get them 10. I would do the same thing back to them. And then they can't counter argument. Do I have Ryan Gable? I do. Play Gable's briefcase maybe to sway a bias. And I will discard Ryan Gable, conspire to sway one bias. Any bias. I think I would sidebar. Oh, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would go for just raw points. Bribery for just 2. And then they could point of law 3. I could sidebar to keep it going. Sidebar to draw probably. They would play malfeasance for 3. And sidebar so I win the tie. Draw 1 card from your opponent's discard. And now I can play counter argument. And then they'd be forced to pass, and we'd resolve the witness. Okay, question. Cool. Sorry for distracting you. Any thoughts yet on season 3? We have some thoughts on season 3. Sam especially has a bunch of ideas. I think for season 3, I think we would probably leave modern times. I think we may do like a future or cyberpunk sort of future. We have a lot of cases sort of around big business ideas. So I think we may do a near future set and sort of theme it all around that. Because Sam has a couple ideas of how to make games. He wants to explore making 3-player games or 4-player games with Lawyer Up. And I know he has an idea about having a robot being tried, for a murder, sort of like iRobot. And you're basically trying to prove whether the robot did it or not, and then whether the robot is a person or not that could be convicted. So like as the robot supporters who believe in like robot autonomy or robot sentience, you can be a third player who's fighting for the robot being recognized as a person. And as the defense, you're trying to prove the robot innocent or prove that the robot is a machine and a tool. And the prosecution's trying to prove the case or something like that. That's definitely Sam's idea. But then I've got some ideas about big businesses doing some corrupt things, sort of inspired by the movie A Civil Action or something like that, where a company's been dumping or experimenting on things up to nefarious things, and you could play sort of as an activist, as the prosecution. Maybe you're an activist or a group of hackers trying to figure out what a big company's up to that's defending itself from like a class action lawsuit. So I think that's where we're leaning. But Sam also has ideas about like ancient Egypt and how the heart is weighed against a feather, for the afterlife. And there's a lot of more out there themes and ideas as well. So, it really comes down to honing in on a case and playtesting it and see what works. And then if we get 2 or 3 cases that work together, we'll probably do a season 3 box, you know, and get it together. It'll take a while though. I mean, this one's been in the works. A lot of these cases, the ideas, you know, were in the works when the first game came out. They just weren't quite finished yet. So when you're making each case as different as they are, it takes a while. But I think it's worth it. I think it's having the uniqueness of each case is important. So when you sit down and play each case, they really feel different, not only in theme and story, but in the way they're actually played. So they give you a memorable experience. I mean, we could easily make new cases that are just like, oh, using the mechanics we have and it's a robbery and changing the story up. But when it takes so long to make games, that's not as interesting to us or as fun for us. Draw 1 planted evidence from the buried evidence. I mean, the 5, obviously. Big Daddy. That's a claimed witness that we can conspire with. We have 1 more round left, and 2 influence to spend, which we can't really spend anywhere as the prosecution. So it'd be wasted. And they lost. And the defense would be forced to call Scarlet. Resolve any unsolved effects on clues twice during this witness. Ouch. Okay. Not a great hand either. I think they would play. I mean, what would you do as the defense now? Would you try to solve this final clue? It has 6 symbols on it. And I would need 2 skulls, which I don't have in my hand. So I think you'd play straight up in the courtroom. So I think you drop this for 4. Oh man. Rough draw over here. Maybe use recess as a link. What's co-counsel do? Play 1 card from your hand ignoring bias, but I can't use it right now. That doesn't match. I think their first action has to be this. Then they can play this, 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 that. Okay. Unsigned contract. Unless the prosecution conspires with Dorothy Lupino or Regina Monroe, draw 2 cards at random for the buried evidence. Yeah, it's definitely worth trying. Unless the prosecution with Dorothy Lupino. I think they have Helen Fairchild. What is it? Or Regina Monroe? They've got Regina Monroe, luckily. You can discard. The important thing about that, though, is that's less witnesses, claimed witnesses for them to influence the jury at the end. So, I mean, I'm still going to have like a 50-50 guess at the end of this, and that's going to be, it's going to come down to my 50-50 guess because I don't see myself getting through that barricade. They're going to drop this 5 now. Conspire with the patsy to draw 1 planted evidence from the buried evidence. Would they do that? They may want the points. Yeah, they'd do it. That planted evidence is real good. Yeah, I mean, they'll draw this other 5. So they can't play, but they could play if they link it up like that. Would they want to jump the gun and link it sooner? Maybe. Let's play here. This here. And let's say they play this. They have Helen Fairchild, but they don't need that. They won't do it because they don't need the heart. Then I will play Emotional Argument for 8. They can't object to it, luckily. I think they'd get scared and do this for 4. That's too close now. I wouldn't pass. I play this down. That would allow them to play this down. I'd trigger new evidence. Get that card. It's a very strong card. They can't play their final card. I could play it by using co-counsel. Let's do it. I could play this for 3. If you have the judge's favor, play 1 card from your hand and refresh your sidebar, then switch the judge to be favorable to your opponent. Play this for 5. Unless the prosecution conspires with the ringleader, shuffle all planted evidence in your opponent's examination and discard into the buried evidence. Do they have a ringleader? They have Officer White. Because they drew the top card of the frickin' deck. So they would conspire with them to prevent that, because otherwise I would absolutely decimate them. I don't know. Sidebar just to take it to the wire. I can play this for 4. Plus, and then discredit the witness. I mean, worth doing. Takes him down 2, which leads to a tie, but prosecution has judge's favor. That was our last card, the ring. Victory, conspire with the ringleader to clear. I don't have a ringleader left. I thought I checked it. All right, so let's finish this game out. This is going to be discarded. This is discarded. They claim this, sway 1 bias, take the 6 probably. Claimed. Okay. Closing statement. Before the prosecution spends influence to sway the jury, you may attempt to solve the case. If you correctly place the culprit, crime scene, and murder weapon, you win. All right. So, the crime scene is in a studio. It was... Who was it? Matthew White? Was it Walter? Let's say it was Scarlett. Let's go with my original guess. It was Scarlett with the knife. Or maybe let's change it. Let's do Walter, who's her husband. Walter with the knife in Zenith Studio. Let's see. So I should have done Scarlett. I actually guessed it right when I called. So I had a lucky guess. I believe I guessed. I mean, you guys can rewind the tape. But I think I guessed Scarlett, the knife, and the studio on a whim when I called Liza Ann. So we played the rest of the game just because I was one player playing for both people. But I think the game would have ended there. Rewind the tape. I think that's what I guessed. But if I guessed Walter right now, I would lose. Because not only is the jury already on their side, but they would get to spend 3 influence for each claimed witness. So even if they were short, they would have 9 influence to get them, there. They'll make it a decisive victory. They could spend 5 of their 9 influence there. They couldn't spend that one, but they have all the jurors on their sides. Everyone believes I did it. And that is the private eye case. So I'm going to switch back to here. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you for watching the stream. Hopefully that gave you a good in-depth look at the private eye case. The only case we haven't done yet from season 2 really is the heist case. And the reason is that is the only case that we still have artwork that we're waiting on for. So I just didn't want to showcase a case where like there'd be a bunch of placeholder art in it. Didn't make sense. But, maybe we can record a video and show off that case sometime, post-campaign or in an update. We can post a video there so you guys can see what it's about. The heist case does have a really cool mechanic that Sam and I have been experimenting with where for anybody that's played Lawyer Up before, the game is typically divided into a drafting phase, the discovery phase, and the trial phase. And for the heist case, we are doing, you're going to draft as you play. So there'll be a small buried evidence deck to start. Like you'll put 4 or 6 cards from the evidence deck in there to start, just so you can interact with it. And then you draw 3 cards from your base deck, so you know you're going to get procedures and arguments from that. And then you draft 3. You do the discovery phase sort of as you play. You draw 3 cards. You pick one to keep for your current hand, give one to your opponent, and bury the other piece of evidence. So it sort of goes along with this heist thing where you're putting together the tools as you play. And it's a really neat way that makes that case feel a lot different. I mean, that case also has 6 different defendants at the same time. So we're sort of doing discovery because it's like you're running around trying all these cases at once, figuring out how the evidence connects. So there's other unique things going on in that case as well, but we really liked mixing up the drafting so you can get the game to the table sort of without that drafting phase where, if you've never played the game before and you draft the first time, you're always saying, I wish I had drafted differently. And there's really no way we can overcome that without having a mechanic like that where you're sort of drafting round by round. So maybe the heist case will become sort of the new tutorial case we can teach people at conventions and stuff, because they won't have to draft the whole case to start. We can get to playing earlier and they can sort of figure it out as they go. But it's a mechanic we really liked, and it makes that case feel distinct. So if that's something you guys are interested in, let us know in the comments, on the crowdfunding page or whatever in the future, and we can definitely look into it. Are there any other questions before we go? I want to have time to answer anything about the crowdfunding campaign or whatever else we have going on in the last 24 hours here. 23 hours now, I think. Would there ever be a crossover of characters from your other games ending up in Lawyer Up? That's a good question, Matt. There are plenty of Easter eggs already, actually. So in Season 2, there are plenty of Easter eggs with character names and flavor text. If you look hard enough, I think you'll see some crossover. Nothing as obvious as the Set of Watch crew being on trial, no, but I know for a fact that there's a reference to the Godfather case. There's like a descendant of one of the Monticellis in another case. I'm pretty sure there's Easter eggs, and I think there will be more Easter eggs in the future. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Again, this video will be up and available for anyone who missed it or came in late to rewind and watch. Remember to check the tapes to see if I guessed it right on a whim. Complete luck if I did guess the culprit and the murder weapon in the private eye. A somewhat educated guess, I guess. But yeah, that is the private investigator case. Thanks so much. You currently have 23 hours left to support the campaign on GameFound. We'd appreciate it so much if you did. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and happy gaming. Hope you guys play something fun this weekend.